What are intervals? Intervals are just the spaces between two notes in a chord. And before we can get into chord theory, this is something we have to understand, which is why I'm making a video about it. Have a look at this diagram. Now, for the sake of simplicity, we'll be using the key of C major. Notice how each note in the scale is numbered. If you played a C and a D together, that interval would be a second. If you played a C and an E, it would be a third. So fundamentally, all we're doing is counting notes. But it gets more complicated if we dig a little deeper. You see, there are three kinds of intervals that I want to explore in this video. The first is exactly what we've just discussed, major intervals. These are intervals containing the roots of a scale and the number of whole notes. The second is a minor interval. These are intervals that include a half step. So for example, if we played a C and then an E flat, it's no longer just a third, now it's a minor third. Another example is if we played a C and an A flat, we'd call that a minor sixth. The last type of interval that I want to discuss is an inverted interval. We get inverted intervals by moving one of the notes up or down an octave. So if we invert a major third, it becomes a minor sixth. Okay, let me explain exactly what's happening here. With inverted intervals, the thing to remember is majors become minors and minors become majors. You want to put that technically, augmented chords become diminished chords become augmented chords. This is because we're changing the scale when we invert an interval. So when we inverted that major third to a minor sixth in the example we just talked about, we were actually changing the key from C to E. And there's no C in an E major scale. There is a C sharp, which is now diminished in this particular interval, thus making it a minor interval. The exception to this rule is if you're dealing with a perfect interval, a fourth, a fifth, or an octave. A major fourths and major fifths, better known as perfect fourths and perfect fifths, are perfect inversions of each other. One more point to look at is the idea of the compound interval. A compound interval is any interval greater than an octave. So we could, for example, call this a major tenth, but it would be much easier to just call it a compound third. So it's a third, but an octave higher. And when you have gigantic intervals on sheet music, it can be much easier to move the roots up an octave and then count, as opposed to counting in its current state. Okay, all of that having been said, why do we even care about intervals in the first place? I believe there are three reasons. First, they are essential for steering the direction of a melody. We use intervals to set the mood of a song, to make a melody sound happy, sad, scary, funny, and many other human emotions. As a matter of fact, we subconsciously use intervals in our everyday speech to help narrate our mood. Number two, they are the building blocks that make it possible to construct chords. A good understanding of intervals is crucial to being able to construct beautiful and interesting chords. This is why I'm doing this video before my video on chord construction. Number three, intervals are invaluable to songwriting and improvisation. They allow us to recognize musical progressions. Remember, music is all about patterns. Intervals are the building blocks of those patterns. I don't normally get philosophical in these videos, but I just feel that intervals are so important, and I think a lot of musicians gloss over the subject when first getting into music. I highly recommend you practice them, study them, and get used to using them. I hope this video has helped you. I'll see you in the next one.